Talia Grayson's red Ferrari made a choking sound before it died completely right in the middle of a dusty two-lane road on the outskirts of Oak Ridge, Arizona, miles from anything but cacti and heat. "Unbelievable," she muttered, shoving her sunglasses up her head and stepping out of the car. The hot sun hit her face instantly and her heels sank into the gravel shoulder. She looked at her phone, no signal. Great, she stared at the open hood like it might fix itself. It didn't. And Talia, despite owning 6 cars across 4 properties, couldn't tell a spark plug from a tire iron. The low rumble of an old pickup truck made her turn. A rusted blue Ford pulled over and a man stepped out, wiping his sunburned neck with a rag. He wore a faded black t-shirt, jeans stained with oil, and boots that had definitely seen better days. His arms were strong, tan, and marked with grease. Handsome in a rugged, exhausted kind of way. "You all right?" he asked, approaching with cautious eyes and a southern drawl. "My car just died," she said, gesturing at the Ferrari like it personally betrayed her. "And I have no signal." He gave a low whistle. "That's a hell of a car to break down in Oak Ridge. You know cars." "I fix 'em," he said, already walking toward the engine. "I'm Isaiah Cole." "Talia," she replied quickly. "No last name, not yet. You think you can fix it?" "I can take a look," he said, lifting the hood. "No promises, though. Ain't every day I get my hands on a Ferrari. Usually it's busted Chevys and lawn mowers." Talia leaned against the door, folding her arms, watching him work. His fingers moved with confidence and experience, wiping sweat from his brow with the edge of his shirt. There was a quiet intensity about him. Not in a cocky way, just a man who carried the weight of the world and didn't complain about it. A few minutes later, he said, "Fuel pump's fried. You're not getting anywhere unless I tow it back to my shop." Her heart sank. "How far is that?" 15 minutes down the road. "I've got a truck with a winch. I'll take you there." Talia hesitated. She never rode with strangers, but something about him didn't feel dangerous. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks and still wouldn't let anyone down. "Okay," she said. They rode in silence at first, the inside of his truck smelling like a mix of motor oil and lemon air freshener. A small, crumpled drawing of a unicorn was stuck in the glove box, and a pink backpack sat in the back seat. "You have a kid?" she asked softly, nodding toward it. He glanced at her, then back at the road. "Yeah, my daughter Zadie, she's 6. Where is she now?" "With my neighbor. I pick her up after work. She likes drawing horses and asking how clouds work." Talia smiled. "She sounds amazing." "She is," a beat passed. "What do you do, Talia?" "I run a company," she said vaguely. "Oh yeah, what kind?" she shrugged. "Luxury interiors, mostly hotels. I travel a lot." He nodded, not prying further. She liked that. Most men would have asked where she lived, what she drove, how much she made. When they pulled up to his shop, it was a small, run-down garage with a hand-painted sign reading Cole Auto Repair. Inside, there were 2 cars on lifts, a bunch of tires, and a small office with a cot pushed into the corner. That's when it hit her. "You live here," she said, glancing at the cot. He didn't flinch. "Yeah, rent's cheaper when it's part of your job." Something tightened in her chest. "I'll order the part tomorrow," he said, hooking her car up to a charger. "You'll need a place to stay tonight." "I'll figure something out," she said. He hesitated, then scratched the back of his neck. "I've got a guest room. Small, but it's clean. You're welcome to it if you want. I'll be here working late anyway." She blinked. "You're offering a stranger your house," he gave a half smile. "You're stranded. I'm not gonna let you sleep in your car." Her driver's instinct screamed no, but her gut said yes. And when he handed her a bottle of water without asking for anything in return, she nodded, "All right." The house was small, 2 bedrooms, worn but clean. Zadie's drawings covered the fridge, and a pair of glitter-covered sneakers sat by the door. Talia stood in the guest room, staring at the faded quilt and the lamp with a missing shade. Isaiah knocked gently. "You good?" She turned. "Yeah, this is." "More than I expected." He leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "You don't seem like you're from around here." She smiled faintly. "I could say the same about your kindness," he chuckled. "Most people just call me stubborn." They stared at each other for a beat too long. "You hungry?" he asked. She nodded. He made grilled cheese and tomato soup. Zadie joined them halfway through, running in with paint on her hands and a stuffed bunny in her arms. "Hi, I'm Zadie," she said, climbing into the chair beside Talia. "Are you my dad's friend?" Talia blinked. "I guess I am." Zadie grinned. Cool, you're really pretty. Thank you, Talia laughed, touched. Isaiah watched them quietly, something warm flickering in his eyes. Later that night, after Zadie was asleep and the dishes were done, Talia stood on the porch with Isaiah, the desert wind brushing her hair back. You didn't have to do all this, she said, I know. Why did you? He looked at her. Because you looked lost, and I know what lost feels like, she swallowed. You don't even know who I am. He stepped a little closer. Maybe. But I know you're not just a girl with a broken car. Her heart beat harder. What if I told you I wasn't who you think I am? He tilted his head. Then I'd say tell me when you're ready. Something inside her shifted. She nodded once quietly and whispered, thank you. He didn't say anything. Just stood beside her in the warm night, a hand brushing against hers, lingering. She didn't move away. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of the guest bedroom as Talia woke to the unfamiliar creak of wood floors and the faint scent of brewed coffee. For a moment, she didn't move. She wasn't in her penthouse. There was no marble bathroom, no city skyline, no assistant knocking with her schedule. Just the quiet hum of life in a house that felt lived in. She pulled on the oversized flannel shirt Isaiah had left folded on the dresser and made her way to the kitchen barefoot. Zadie sat at the table, legs swinging, sipping from a cup with a chipped handle and humming to herself. Isaiah stood at the stove, flipping something in a pan. He glanced over his shoulder when he heard Talia's footsteps. Hope you like pancakes, he said. They're not fancy, but they're hot. Talia slid into the chair across from Zadie. That smells incredible, Zadie grinned. He only makes them right on Sundays. Even if it's not Sunday. I'll take that as a compliment, Isaiah said, plating the pancakes with a slice of butter and a drizzle of syrup. You sleep all right, better than I have in weeks, Talia admitted. Zadie leaned closer. Do you know how to braid? My dad only knows one kind and it looks like a twisty snake. I might be able to help, Talia said, reaching for a comb from the counter. Zadie turned in her chair and Talia gently worked through the tangles, fingers nimble. Isaiah watched for a moment without saying anything, then cleared his throat. The part for your car'll get here by noon. I can probably have it running again by dinner. Talia nodded, her hands still weaving through Zadie's curls. You're efficient. I try, he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. You headed back to California after that, she paused. Eventually. You don't sound thrilled about it. I'm not sure I am, she said. I've been working nonstop for 7 years. Sometimes I forget what it's even for. Zadie turned to face her again. If I had a job, I'd work at a zoo or a castle. I think you'd be great at both, Talia said with a small laugh. Isaiah leaned against the counter. What brought you out this way anyway? She hesitated. I was supposed to meet someone in Flagstaff. Business. But I canceled last minute. Decided to drive a little with no real plan. Guess I got what I asked for. You looking to get away from something? He asked, not unkindly. More like away from everything, she said. Being in control all the time gets exhausting. He nodded slowly, then looked at Zadie. Why don't you grab your backpack, kiddo? I'll walk you down the road to Miss Lillian's. Zadie hopped off the chair and scurried down the hall. Talia stood and started clearing the plates. You don't have to do that, Isaiah said. I know, she replied, rinsing them anyway. It's the least I can do. As they finished up, she noticed a photograph pinned to the fridge. Isaiah holding a younger Zadie, both covered in mud, laughing, no woman in sight. Zadie's mom. She began carefully. Left 3 years ago, he said without turning. She wasn't built for this kind of life. I don't blame her, but I haven't heard from her since. Talia pressed her lips together. That must have been hard. It was, still is. But Zadie's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'd sleep on concrete before I let her go without. Talia looked at him then, really looked. There was a quiet gravity in his tone, not bitterness, just a fierce sense of responsibility. The kind of man who didn't flinch when life got hard. When Zadie came running back into the room with her backpack bouncing on her shoulders, Isaiah ruffled her hair and held the door. I'll be right back, he said to Talia as they stepped outside. She watched them walk down the gravel path, Zadie skipping beside him, her hand in his. Something stirred in her chest that had nothing to do with curiosity and everything to do with how steady he looked beside that little girl. While they were gone, she wandered through the house. The walls were bare except for two hand-drawn calendars, each with days crossed out and little stars marking special ones. One was labeled Zadie's reading log. The other was his work rotation. Bills sat stacked neatly in a ceramic dish, some marked overdue. In the corner of the living room sat an old upright piano, dusty and untouched. When he returned, she was leaning against the doorway, staring at it. "Didn't peg you for a musician," she said. "I'm not," he replied, brushing dust from the lid. "My brother played. I keep it for Zadie just in case she wants to learn someday." "You have siblings?" "Had just him," he said. "He passed last year. I'm sorry." "Yeah," he said softly. "I still find myself expecting him to walk through the door." She looked at him, the guarded expression he wore when talking about pain, not the kind of man who asked for sympathy. He carried it, quietly, constantly. "You ever think about leaving here?" she asked. "Every time I can't afford a new radiator," he said, "but I stay for her. She's got roots here, and she needs stability a hell of a lot more than I need a bigger town." She stepped closer. "What about what you need?" He met her eyes. "I stopped thinking about that a long time ago." The silence between them pulsed, not awkward, just full of unspoken things. Then he looked away. "Anyway, you'll be back on the road tonight," he said. "You'll get where you need to go." She didn't answer. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't sure where that was. By the time the sun had begun to slip behind the low hills, Isaiah had finished working on her car. He wiped his hands on a rag, his jaw tight with concentration as he leaned over the open hood. Talia watched from the edge of the garage, arms crossed, her gaze flicking between him and the surrounding desert, now bathed in soft gold. "It's ready," he said without looking up. "Should run smooth now." She stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You sure? I wouldn't send you off in something I wasn't sure about," he replied. "You'll be fine." Talia didn't answer right away. She stood still, listening to the quiet hum of cicadas and the distant bark of a dog from one of the nearby homes. The stillness of Oak Ridge was starting to feel less like a pause and more like a question. "I can leave tonight," she said, her voice low. "You could," he said, shutting the hood. "Or you don't have to," she raised an eyebrow. "You offering a permanent guest room?" He shook his head once. "No. I'm saying you look different this morning, not lost, just lighter." "I didn't think anyone noticed," she said. "I notice a lot of things," he said, "but I don't ask if people don't want to talk about him." Talia stepped closer, the scent of motor oil lingering faintly in the cooling air. "What do you want to ask?" He wiped his hands again, slower this time. "Why someone like you, successful, polished, probably used to 5-star everything, ends up here, with no one knowing where she is." She hesitated. Then she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She answered honestly. "Because I was tired of people needing something from me. My name opens doors. It also keeps them from seeing me as a person. In meetings, I'm not Talia, I'm the company, the bottom line, the brand. I wanted to disappear for a while. I didn't expect to break down in the middle of nowhere, but maybe I needed to." He studied her for a long moment. "Most people don't admit that." "I guess I'm not most people," she said. He folded the rag in his hands, eyes unreadable. "You never told me your last name." She met his gaze. "Grayson." He was quiet for a beat. "As in Grayson Lux," she nodded once. "You Googled me." "No," he said, "but I used to drive past one of your hotels when I was in Phoenix visiting the hospital. Zadie had appointments there when she was younger." Talia exhaled, the weight of her identity settling between them like a thread pulled too tight. "So now you know," he gave a slow nod. "Doesn't change anything," she blinked. "No questions, I've got plenty," he said. "But I figure if you wanted to tell me more, you would have already." She looked down at the gravel beneath her feet. "What if I told you I don't know what I'm doing anymore, that I don't recognize my life half the time?" "I'd say join the club," he said, his voice even. "We meet here in the garage. Admission's free, but you're required to carry your own baggage." A laugh escaped her lips before she could stop it. He stepped back, leaning against the workbench. "So what are you going to do now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I could drive back, get on a plane, walk into the next boardroom like nothing happened, but I'd still be empty." "Then don't go back yet," he said. "Stay a little longer, not forever, just until you're not running anymore." Her throat tightened. "You'd let me stay? I've got an extra room," he said. And Zadie already asked if you'd be here tomorrow. I didn't have an answer. Talia looked at him, really looked. There was no calculation in his eyes, no hidden agenda, just a man offering her space to breathe. I'm not great at slow, she said. I build empires, I don't know how to just. You learn, he said. Or you don't. Either way, it's quieter here, gives you room to figure it out. She stepped forward just a little. And you? I work, I raise my kid. I try to make it to the next day with enough left in the tank to do it again. That sounds exhausting. He gave a short laugh. It is, but it's also mine, and that counts for something. Talia's fingers brushed the edge of the car, the metal still warm from the day's sun. If I stay, it won't be forever. I wouldn't ask for forever, he said. Just dinner. She tilted her head. Are you asking me out? He shrugged. I'm asking if you're hungry. She smiled, the first real one in days. I could eat. He pushed off the bench and grabbed his keys. There's a place down the highway, nothing fancy. But they make a decent burger. Do I need to change? He glanced at her flannel shirt and jeans. You're perfect. As they drove in his truck, the last traces of orange faded from the sky. She watched him from the corner of her eye, his hand steady on the wheel, his profile outlined by the glow of oncoming headlights. He didn't fill the silence with empty words, and she didn't feel the need to. The diner was tucked off the road, its neon sign flickering against the dusk. Inside, the booths were cracked and the jukebox played something old and slow. They sat across from each other, and she caught the waitress glancing at her twice before whispering something behind the counter. I think you've been recognized, Isaiah said, sipping his drink. I think I don't care, she replied. They ordered burgers, fries, and cherry pie for dessert. When their food arrived, she ate like she hadn't in weeks, without watching her posture, without counting calories, without pretending she wasn't hungry. Halfway through the meal, he asked, Do you ever miss what came before all of it? She paused, chewing thoughtfully. I miss not being watched, I miss being able to fail without headlines, and I miss knowing people's motives. He nodded slowly. That's why I didn't ask for your last name, I noticed. When the check came, he reached for it without hesitation. She began. No, he said. Tonight I'm buying, doesn't matter who's got what in the bank. She didn't argue. Instead, she followed him back to the truck, her fingers brushing his as he opened the door. The drive back was quiet again, but softer this time. The kind of silence that didn't require filling. When they pulled into the driveway, she turned to him. Thanks for dinner. He gave a nod. Thanks for staying. As she stepped out, their hands touched again, this time lingering just a second longer than necessary. Neither of them said anything. But something between them had shifted, unmistakable. Neither of them wanted to take it back. The next morning, Talia stood barefoot in Isaiah's backyard, holding a chipped mug of coffee and staring out at the low wooden fence that bordered the property. Beyond it, the desert stretched wide and golden, dotted with wildflowers and the occasional jackrabbit darting through the brush. The air was crisp, cool enough that her breath curled faintly in front of her. She hadn't experienced quiet like this in years, the kind that made her feel both exposed and anchored. Inside, she could hear Isaiah reading to Zadie, his voice low and even, occasionally interrupted by a giggle or a question. The moment was so domestic it caught her off guard. She held the mug tighter. Isaiah stepped outside a few minutes later, wiping his hands on a towel. He nodded toward the mug. You found the good stuff. I did, she said. You okay with me stealing your last scoop of decent coffee? He leaned against the porch post. If it's for you, yeah. If it were for someone else, I'd be offended. Talia set the mug down on the railing, her fingers brushing the worn wood. I called my assistant this morning. Isaiah's brow lifted slightly. Didn't think you'd brought your phone back to life yet. I didn't. I used the landline in your office, she said. I told her I'd be off grid for a few more days, maybe a week. He gave a slow nod. That's a big step. She sounded like she was going to faint, Talia said with a short laugh. Apparently, I haven't taken a real break in 8 years. Isaiah didn't respond at first. Then, you're not just taking a break, are you? She looked at him. No, I'm not. Zadie's voice floated through the screen door. Dad, I can't find my socks. Isaiah turned his head. Check the laundry basket, Talia smiled. She's got an energy reserve I'll never understand. She gets it from her mother, he said, then paused. The good parts anyway. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Talia said, I think I needed to meet both of you. More than I realized. He looked at her carefully. What happens when you go back, not to your job, to your life? I don't know, she said honestly. But I don't want to go back to being the version of me that makes everyone else comfortable. I want more than meetings and 5-star lobbies. I want to feel like I'm choosing my life, not managing it. Isaiah stepped down from the porch, walking toward her. So choose it. She met his eyes. It's not that simple. Doesn't mean it's not worth trying. Later that afternoon, she helped Zadie with an art project at the kitchen table, painting a cardboard rocket ship. Talia rolled up her sleeves, laughing as Zadie insisted on adding glitter to the nose cone. Isaiah watched from the doorway. You're gonna regret the glitter. I already do, Talia said, brushing a sparkling fleck off her cheek. But she's convincing. Zadie beamed. It's a space rocket. It has to sparkle. When the rocket was done and Zadie was down for a nap, Talia followed Isaiah into the garage. He was organizing tools, his movements efficient and quiet. Have you ever thought about expanding? She asked, running her fingers along a row of labeled drawers. He gave her a sidelong glance. With what money? I wasn't offering, she said quickly. Not like that, I meant, if you had the resources, would you? Isaiah leaned against the workbench. I've thought about it. A better lift, maybe hiring someone for the front desk so I can focus on repairs. But it's never been in the cards. Well, she said slowly, maybe I know someone who could help, no strings, no publicity, just someone who believes in the way you do things. He studied her. You're serious. I don't make offers I don't mean, she said. And I'm not trying to buy my way into your life. I see what you've built. I think it deserves more. He walked over, standing in front of her. You really don't know how rare you are, do you? She tilted her head. I'm starting to. He touched her hand, calloused fingers brushing hers. I don't care about your name or your money, but I care about how you look at my daughter and how you look at me. She exhaled, her voice soft. How do I look at you? Like I'm enough, even when I don't feel like it. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached up and kissed him. It wasn't rushed or unsure, it was deliberate, grounded, and warm. Like two people who'd already seen each other's scars and decided they could handle them. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I didn't expect you. Neither did I, she whispered. That evening, they sat on the porch with Zadie curled up between them, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars blink to life above the desert. Zadie pointed toward a particularly bright one. That one's mine, she said sleepily. I named it Daisy. Isaiah smiled. Think it knows. It will now, she said, eyes closing. Talia brushed a hand over the girl's curls. She's magic. She is, he said, then looked at her. So are you. You just forgot for a while. She leaned against him, the three of them forming a quiet circle of warmth beneath the vast sky. Later, after Zadie was asleep and the house was silent again, Isaiah stood in the doorway of the guest room. I don't want you to leave, he said quietly. But if you do, I won't stop you. Talia crossed the room, stopping just in front of him. I'm not leaving, he blinked. You sure? I've spent my entire life building things that looked perfect on the outside. This, you and Zadie, it's the first thing that feels real all the way through. His voice was rough. Then stay. She touched his face, her thumb brushing the edge of his jaw. I'm not here to save you, Isaiah. You don't need saving. I just want to stand beside you, build something together. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt like they had to hold anything back. Weeks passed. Talia didn't go back to her old place, she sold it, quietly. She didn't announce anything in the press. She let her company run without her for the first time since she founded it. She'd earned that. Isaiah hired help for the shop. Talia helped him renovate the front office, turning it into something functional and welcoming. They didn't make a spectacle out of it. They just worked together. Zadie told everyone at school that her dad's new friend was the boss of hotels and glitter rockets. One evening, under the same sky where they first sat together, Isaiah brought out a small, square box. I don't have a jet or a mansion, he said, but I've got a life I want to share. And I've got you. Talia's breath caught as he opened it, a simple ring set with a single sapphire. He didn't kneel, he just looked her in the eye. Marry me, Talia, not for the headlines, not for the money, just for the life we could make right here. She smiled, eyes bright with tears. Yes. They didn't need a cathedral or a ballroom, they just needed each other. And that was more than enough. The early summer heat rolled in slowly, heavy with wild lavender and sun-baked stone. Talia stood beneath the low awning of the newly renovated garage, clipboard in hand, hair tied up in a knot that had already started to unravel. She wore paint-streaked denim and a tank top, sun on her shoulders and dirt under her nails. Not a designer label in sight. Isaiah stepped out from under the lifted hood of a dusty Buick, grease on his forearms, a pencil tucked behind his ear. "That part you ordered last week," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. "It came in." Talia handed him the invoice. "I already signed for it." He raised his brows. "You're getting good at this. I'm considering a hostile takeover of your entire inventory system," she teased. Isaiah leaned in close. "If you do, at least let me keep my drawer of loose screws. That's the first thing I'm reorganizing." He kissed her cheek, then tapped the clipboard. "You still planning to head into town later, just for an hour? I promised Claire I'd stop by and help her finalize the budget for the school auction." He gave a low laugh. "You realize you've been roped into every committee within a 10-mile radius." "I said I wanted to be part of the community," she said, brushing a curl off her face. "Apparently that means raffles and bake sales. You're better at fitting in than you think." She glanced over at the new sign mounted above the garage entrance. "Cole and Grayson Auto." "I still think we should have gone with Grease and Grace," he said. She narrowed her eyes. "That's awful," he grinned. Zadie liked it. She also thinks glitter belongs on brake pads. She has vision. They both turned as the school bus rumbled down the road and came to a stop at the corner. Zadie hopped off, backpack swinging, a poster tube tucked under one arm. "Guess what?" she called, running up the gravel drive. "My drawing got picked for the fair." Talia knelt to meet her at eye level. "That's amazing, sweetheart. What did you draw?" "A dragon eating a sandwich," Zadie said proudly. Isaiah chuckled. "Of course it was. I put your names on the back," Zadie added, "because you're my people." Talia's throat tightened. She kissed the top of Zadie's head. "We're lucky to be yours." That night, after dinner and a chaotic attempt at baking muffins for the school fundraiser, Talia stood in the quiet kitchen, drying dishes while Isaiah wiped flour off the counter. Zadie had fallen asleep on the couch, surrounded by colored pencils and half-finished sketches. Isaiah glanced over, watching her. "You ever miss it?" She didn't have to ask what he meant. "I miss parts," she admitted. "The rhythm, the challenge, but not the loneliness. Not the masks." He set the towel down, stepped close. "You don't have to give up everything." "I know," she said. "But I don't want to live in two worlds anymore. I want one that makes sense. One where I can build something and still have people to come home to." Isaiah rested his hands on her hips. "I want the same thing. I thought for so long that love meant compromise, giving up pieces of yourself for someone else. But with you, it's like I get to be more." He kissed her, slow and certain, then rested his forehead against hers. "That's how I know it matters." The following weekend, the town hosted its annual summer fair. Talia stood with Isaiah and Zadie beneath strings of lanterns hung between wooden poles, the scent of kettle corn and grilled sausage thick in the air. Zadie's dragon drawing had taken second place, much to her delight, and she now wore her ribbon like a crown. Isaiah leaned toward Talia as the band began to play. "Dance with me." "I haven't danced in years." "Then you're overdue." He took her hand, led her to the makeshift dance floor where couples swayed under the stars. She rested her head against his chest, the fabric of his shirt warm against her cheek. The music was slow, sweet, and a little off-key. "You know," she said, "if someone had told me I'd fall in love with a mechanic in a town with one diner, I would have laughed." He spun her gently. "Yeah. And now I hope I never leave." Isaiah stopped, cupped her face. "Then don't." "I won't," she said. "Not ever." That fall they were married in the field behind the garage, the grass trimmed, the sky cloudless. Talia wore a simple ivory dress with lace sleeves, her hair down, wild curls catching the breeze. Zadie walked ahead of her, scattering paper stars instead of petals. Isaiah wore a dark gray vest and boots, his tie slightly crooked. The service was short. The vows were whispered but meant. "I never expected you," Isaiah said, eyes locked on hers. "But now I don't know how I ever lived without you." And I never knew what home was, Talia replied, voice shaking, until I found you. They kissed to the sound of laughter and clapping and Zadie shouting, finally. Afterward, they danced barefoot in the grass, stars above, the garage lit with strings of lights and laughter echoing through the night. Years passed. Talia turned the empty lot beside the garage into a community space, a garden in the spring, a pumpkin patch in the fall. She still owned Grayson Lux, but now it ran without her constant oversight. The world still knew her name, but in Oakridge she was just Talia Cole. Isaiah's shop grew. He had 2 new bays, a waiting room with real furniture, and a crew he trusted. He still worked under the hood most days, and he still came home with grease on his hands. Zadie thrived. She painted murals on the school walls, kept a collection of rocks in alphabetized jars, and introduced Talia at parent-teacher night as my bonus mom who used to own the world. One evening, long after the sun had dipped below the horizon, Talia stood at the back porch, arms wrapped around herself as the wind rustled through the tall grass. Isaiah came up behind her, slipped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "Everything all right?" he asked. She nodded. "More than all right." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You still happy?" She turned in his arms. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." They stood together in the quiet, wrapped in each other, the world soft around them. They had love. They had laughter. They had a life. And it was theirs, messy, imperfect, beautiful, forever.